Hello and welcome, family, to another episode of Wake Up Africa. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki. How you doing? How's everything going? I really do pray that you are well in all your ways, and at the very least, that you are tapped in and tapping your family into our narrative, the African news, the African alternative voices out there, which are actually growing in number, and not just the lifestyle people, but the ones who are really telling the news. And it's so funny because this happened about a week ago, but as we always say, we're not here to break the news. We're here to analyze it and kind of give the spiritual dimensions and put it in our own narrative. Big shout out to La Journal de l'Afrique, which is another very important African voice, and they talk about Ukraine president. I think I've done several shows where I was talking about how the Ukrainian president wanted to speak at the African Union. He literally called on twice. He was ignored the first time. And there was a lot of Africans who were like, no, why should our president speak to him? His nation is racist. They treated our people badly, etc., etc., etc. So then now, he called on it again, I think a month or so later, asking to address the African Union for a second time, was largely ignored. And then finally, Macron and Olaf Scholz, who is a politician in Germany, put enough pressure on the current chair of the African Union, Macky Sall from Senegal, to gather as many heads of state from the continent as possible for a meeting with the Ukrainian president. And they were literally just shoving Zelensky down the throats of our continental leaders. They thought, Western media was also making such a cry of it. And, so they felt like everyone would show up, everyone would play fiddle. You see, they failed to overstand, understand, and understand family. That there's a new dispensation on the motherland, and it's not business as usual on Mama Africa, and we are a new breed, a higher breed, a more mentally agile breed of Africans. And so, they tried to force this meeting. The international media was talking about it, putting pressure on this guy. And can you imagine, only 2 presidents showed up. And I love it because these guys are like, only 2 presidents were interested in what the ex-comedian had to say to Africa. The only guys who showed up were AU Commission Chairperson Faki, who many have an issue with. He's such a sellout to Babylon, along with Macky Sall and his Congolese counterpart, Denis Sassou Nguesso. They were all the only ones interested in this meeting that took place on June 20th. That's so embarrassing. That's so embarrassing, but it's also so encouraging because it shows that in their own way, the presidents of the various countries across Africa are starting to assert themselves. That means out of 55 presidents, family, many who are probably arm twisted, only 2 showed up. That's just embarrassing at this point. I think this will prove the point. Like, stop shoving people, stop shoving your agendas down our throats. And you can't treat our people anyhow and then expect us to bend over backwards. And I think Zelensky's too new to the game for the puppet presidents to even give him their attention. And, they said that the reason Macky Sall even held this meeting is because he wanted, to show that Africa is neutral in this situation. But to be honest, a lot of the whole vibe of the Ukraine, they lost the narrative, they lost the plot. They totally shunned African support when we saw how our African brothers and sisters were being treated. And then on top of it, Zelensky didn't even offer an apology, but instead said any African student who leaves now will never be allowed back. And we saw the racism our people were put through, being thrown off trains, just being mistreated, being mishandled. And if the presidents don't remember, the citizens do. And trust me, the citizens wouldn't take kindly to their president wasting their time to go to this. And it also shows you how little power Western media now has in trying to influence the actions of our presidents. In fact, Western media doesn't have that strong of a stronghold over the youth of many African nations. It's only our mothers, our aunts, those are the only people who watch BBC and CNN religiously, our uncles, that generation. But from us down, it's just like, what? Many of us don't even have TVs, man. Everything is on these mobiles. So it's not like that's the only thing we can connect to. So Western media doesn't have that big stronghold in Mama Africa. And I think this was shocking. And then guess what? When Macky Sall, the president of Senegal, when he saw the low turnout, they turned the meeting private. And this angered the Mzungus even more, family. Because that meant that there would be, the narrative would not float into the different African newspapers. No one really covered this in Africa. No national publications. And they were really mad that it was turned private because, it was a private or whatever. It was made a private meeting. They were so angry at that because then they missed the opportunity, for them to influence the narrative of the continent, which is what they were trying to do from the beginning. Because, Zelensky had come with a speech, Russia is holding Africa hostage or Africa, whatever, no one cares. And, from Le Journal de l'Afrique, they say the symbol of just two presidents showing up. I think some ambassadors and ministers representing Algeria, South Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, and Egypt also showed up. Thank you, Kenya. At least sometimes you guys get some things right. You weren't there. But they say, the symbolism is overwhelming. The other African presidents have simply boycotted the Ukrainian president. Moreover, the AU decided to hold a meeting behind closed doors at the last minute, a detail that has aroused the annoyance of the Western media, which believe that African heads of state would like to prevent Zelensky's outspokenness from feeding the press headlines. So just by making it public, they killed that narrative, family. They killed it. Because then it didn't make any headlines anywhere. What made the headlines across the motherland was how I think only 2 presidents, some were saying 4 presidents, showed up. This is a new Africa, family. I don't know. May those who have the eye to see it. That we're on a new trajectory that cannot be stopped. And when us as a real Pan-Africanists take over some of these governments and change those narratives, it will be like a domino effect. It will go full force ahead. This is amazing, family. This is amazing. And it just shows you that, and I think this sends a very clear kind of message to Babylon. That you see, what they need is the minds of the people. If they don't drive our headlines, then their narrative becomes irrelevant. Their agenda becomes irrelevant. And what has been happening recently, family, is that the narrative that they've tried to push has failed. It's like when this Philippe guy wanted to came to the Democratic Republic of Congo. His whole trip was overshadowed by he needs to say sorry, he didn't say sorry, we demand an apology. It totally changed that narrative. Even with just the heads of government of the Commonwealth, which just took place in Rwanda. Charles, the Queen's son, he had to say how profoundly sorry he was and say that these are the conversations we had to have in order to avoid the backlash that his son William and Kate went through. So the narrative is changing. Whether these elitists, these puppets, these blind and brainwashed Oreos who are heading governments, etc., whether they see it or not, the narrative is changing. And let me tell you, we're going to reach a day when these guys won't want to be president anymore. These secret society people and these puppets, it will just be too much. Because they will now become like they'll be seen for who they really are. The colonial, like the homeboys. Is that what they were called? The ones who, like the house guards, I don't know what the official name was for them, but during like colonialism, they used to hire one tribe and then put them against another tribe, and these were the home guards. I think that's what they were called, and these were the ones who betrayed their people, who who implemented the agenda of the colonizers. It's like the same, the slave traders who look like you and me. All these, it's their descendants that are ruling right now. And it's going to become too hot for them to handle because they don't have the stomach to stand up against Babylon. And they definitely won't have the courage to go against their own people. Watch this space, family. It's about to get interesting. Tuko pamoja.